You've got the Pittsburgh Steelers now. They're on the clock at 17, needing tackle, linebacker, and defensive back.
I do have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Darnell Wright is still sitting there on the board. I think that the Pittsburgh O-line all of a sudden just became atrocious over the last couple of years, and I think they've really failed to invest in that in the way that they should have. We're going to fix that problem right here. Go ahead and take Darnell Wright off the board and finally get some protection for Kenny Pickett. They've got to find out if Kenny Pickett is their guy or if they're going to be entering the Caleb Williams sweepstakes this year, and they need to find that out quickly. So let's get whoever ends up being that quarterback some protection. Darnell Wright off to Pittsburgh.
The Detroit Lions are now on the clock. They took edge Will Anderson at number 6. They have another pick here at number 18. Wide receiver, tight end, defensive interior are their needs. You took Michael Mayer 2 picks earlier. I don't know if they just love Quentin Johnston out of TCU or Jordan Addison, the slot receiver from USC. So I'm also going to take a tight end here, and this may really upset the draft board because Dalton Kincaid finds his way into the top 20. He's kind of a tweener, right? He's not really big enough to be your traditional tight end. He's not small enough to be your traditional slot wide receiver, but the dude catches passes. And I think another weapon where he can be moved around along with TJ Hawkinson, who's tight end 1 now in Detroit. I think it's a powerful combo for Detroit's offense. You've got Jamison Williams out wide. They could very easily go with a wide receiver here, but for me, I've actually got Kincaid graded higher than Addison and Quentin Johnston. I think they're, like you mentioned, bugaboos with both of those guys that slide them down the board. Kincaid's a very versatile prospect, and I think the Lions would love to have him.
That's a great pick. And, since trading away Hawkinson, I think that that's a huge need for the Lions, probably more so than wide receiver at this point, because they're going to get a big boost with names escaping me, but the guy out of Bama, Jamison Williams.
Jamison Williams,
basically just didn't get to play last year. So him coming back is going to be essentially another draft pick for them. And yeah, I think tight end's the way to go there. Tampa Bay all of a sudden has a ton of needs here, and they're kind of getting wiped out at offensive line. They're kind of getting wiped out. Not as much at defensive line. They don't need as much of a true edge rusher as they do need interior help with an aging core there. Brian Bresee is a possibility here. I think that might be reaching just a little bit, but I think that unless they get sucked into the just run on tight ends right here, they really need some help at tight end. But I think the better pick would be Bresee. So we're going to take Brian Bresee out of Clemson right here.
Okay. Yeah, a guy who has a lot of potential, has flashed a lot of talent at Clemson. He's obviously missed a bunch of time, lost his sister to a battle with cancer last year. He's also had a number of injuries. There's a chance he falls outside the top 20, but there's also a chance that Tampa, who, it's kind of Vita Vea and a bunch of bodies.
Exactly.
Defending the run, they need somebody to pair with Vita. And I think Bresee could be a great part to add there as well. And I'm glad you caught me with the Detroit Lions. I said to pair with TJ Hawkinson. I was thinking of the Vikings who traded for TJ Hawkinson. So, yeah, the Lions need a tight end 1. Kincaid's the pick there. I've got 2 now with the Seahawks and the Chargers. We'll start to speed this up a little bit. Seahawks, with their first pick, took Jalen Carter out of Georgia. Interior offensive line is not really available right now. I mean, I guess they could take a guard. Your first guard is probably Osiris Torrance, this would feel like a little bit of a reach. I think you're starting to see him slide back to the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. So we're going to say that the Seahawks end up taking possibly the next wide receiver there to help out whoever is going to be their quarterback. If it's Geno Smith, wherever they end up going maybe next year, I'm going to say they take wide receiver Jordan Addison from USC. It'll be interesting to see how Addison does playing in the weather up in Seattle, but I think he's a very safe, a solid pick for them. They go with the speed, the playmaking ability of Addison over Quentin Johnston here.
I think that's a great pick. Jordan Addison is my wide receiver 2 on my personal board, and I think playing out of the slot is not going to be a problem for him. I think that's going to translate just fine.
The Chargers are now on the board. You've just upset the whole apple cart because they were going to go Michael Mayer. We know Kellen Moore, former offensive coordinator from the Cowboys, is there. He loves himself some tight ends. He doesn't get it, though. And Justin Herbert needs another weapon to try and take this over the top. I'm going to say they're really upset with Mayer not being there, and so they're going to chase a unicorn, and we're going to go Darnell Washington,
All
tight end out of
right.
Georgia. I think a lot of people are going to see this as a reach. You saw mock drafts right after the combine, throwing Darnell up into the top 15 even, and now that hype has started to settle down. You started to see him fall back out of the first round. I still think that you can teach him how to play the traditional tight end position, and the size, the physicality, the strength, all things that are valued in a traditional tight end. I think this actually makes a lot of sense for the Chargers.
I think if they're in this situation, we're on Bijan watch right here because Austin
Sure.
Eckler is not long for LA.
Want to trade.
They wanted a trade. They've not found a trade. They basically said he's going to be back this year, but he's not going to get any long-term deal done there. So Bijan being the heir apparent to Austin Eckler, I think would really excite Chargers fans. So I think we'll be on Bijan watch with that pick there if the board falls this way,
Sure.
but Washington could certainly be a wild card as well. Now we're going to start. Man, I go back and forth on both Baltimore and Minnesota probably really need a wide receiver right here.
Yeah.
Minnesota, if they saw the board, if they saw Addison come off the board to Seattle right there, I'm sure would be just sprinting to the phone to try to trade up with LA to get in front of Baltimore. But in our scenario, Baltimore and Minnesota stay pat, and Baltimore is going to take Quentin Johnston. I think that is just an absolute need. We have no idea what's going to happen with Lamar. If we get news about him before then, we might see Baltimore moving up in the draft. Baltimore is just on such a weird trajectory right now with the way they've decided to handle this Lamar Jackson situation. So for our intents and purposes, it seems like the Odell signing was a good sign for Lamar wanting to stay there. So we'll give Lamar yet another weapon in Quentin Johnston. And now Minnesota is in a really they're in a bit of a pickle here because
it's tough.
They do not want to go into this year, I think, with Justin Jefferson and a bunch of Jags at the wide receiver position. And they really is not another first round wide receiver on the board.
No.
They really need to sit tight and just kind of wait for those to fall to them in the second round. So you look at the best available players, you could get a Miles Murphy out of Clemson or a Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa at the edge position. Sure. They really need some D-line help too. So we're going to go with Kalijah Kancey out of Pitt at the D-line position. I think that would give them a good help. Also some linebackers on the board that they could take there, but we'll go D-line.
I like that pick a lot. Kancey's a guy who's undersized, but is very explosive, offers a lot more in run support than you would think, and he has a strange habit of bursting through the middle to get to the quarterback. So he's a guy that I think can do it all, even though he's not that tall and weighs, I think, like 285 pounds. Like, he's not a big guy, but could be a really, really fun pick for Minnesota. Their defensive tackle number 3, according to Dane Brugler. Where do the Jags go now? Kind of cleaned out at interior offensive line. The edge, there's edge rushers there, kind of cleaned out at cornerback. What do the Jags do?
I think they've got to go edge. I think the best available player left on the board, I think the top 2, I should say, left on the board are those 2 edge rushers, Miles Murphy and Lucas Van Ness out of Clemson and Iowa, respectively. We're going to go with Van Ness just as the best value. He's ranked number 3 on Dane Brugler's positional rankings at the edge position. So we're going to go Van Ness. A lot of production at Iowa, start on that defense, and I think he could be just a great pickup for Jacksonville here.
Gracious,